What's up guys, welcome back to Toon Duelists. Today it's time for another deck of our last poll, which is the Gren Maju OTK deck. Now I'm really excited to show this one to you guys. If you follow this channel for a while, you know we don't only talk about full power meta decks, but we also show you some OG anime decks and also some experimental stuff. And this one is definitely one of the latter. Now, when I first started playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, Chaos Sorcerer was one of my favorite cards of all time. It still is until today. So I always build decks that revolve around banishing a lot. And this is also the reason why Gren Maju grew on me very fast. And I kept holding on to it until today. And yeah, today I want to show you my idea of the Gren Maju OTK deck. It's really experimental, very rogue. Nothing to play at tournaments, of course, but a very fun deck, and I'm excited to show it to you guys. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. As always, we start things off with the monsters, and the first monster we're talking about is, of course, Gren Maju OTK. Really great card and key card for this deck, with the simple effect that this card's ATK and defense is the number of your banished cards times 400. Which is actually pretty amazing because we have plenty of cards that will easily put this thing to 4000 ATK points or more. So yeah, great card, very easy, plain and simple, but the key card of this deck. Next up, it's time for some Kaiju action, and the first three off is Thunder King, the Lightning Strike Kaiju. Now we only need this for its 3300 attack. We want to give our opponent to run into. I'll explain to you why later. And this is also the reason why we run 3 copies of Jitsuriko, the Star Destroying Kaiju. Just need those big bodies so we can run into it with our next card, which is Soul Tiger. Basically, you don't need Soul Tiger. If there's another normal monster with 0 attack, you can use this instead. I just go with Soul Tiger here. Our next 3 off is Gizmek Orochi, the Serpentron Sky Slasher. Now, this card is really amazing in this deck because you can special summon it from your hand or graveyard as a quick effect if you banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down. So, another card that helps us banish and special summon a body on the field, which is pretty great. And also you can banish 3 cards from your extra deck face down and target a face-up monster on the field and destroy it, but you can only use 1 effect of Gizmek Orochi per turn. But great card to help you survive or to bring out a body and also maybe destroy some annoying monsters. And of course, we also run 3 copies of Shifter in this deck. Amazing, of course, we want to banish everything we can and we can annoy our opponent with this card. So one of the few decks where I say you can main Shifter no problem. And yeah, guys, that's already it with the monsters. Next up, we talk about the spells, and the first 3 off we talk about is Inferno Tempest. Really actually the other key card in this deck, because this card has the amazing effect that when you take 3000 or more battle damage from 1 attack, you can activate this card. And then you remove all monsters in each player's deck and graveyard from play. This card is pretty amazing. The reason why we run the Kaijus and the reason why we want to run into them with our Soul Tiger, so we can resolve this card. It will basically make them unable to play whatsoever. And we don't care about that much. If we have a Gren Maju in hand, we're safe. And yeah, awesome card, definite 3 off. And as I said, part of the key combo in this deck. The next 3 off we run is 3 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. This is a going second deck, of course, if we want to summon out the Kaijus, and this card is amazing because we can destroy as many monsters on the field as possible and then special summon in attack position 2 Kaiju monsters with different names from our deck, 1 on each side, but they cannot change their battle position and must attack if able. Also, during the main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard and add a Kaiju monster from your deck to your hand. Now, just amazing to special out our Kaiju straight from the deck so we don't have to draw into them. Also gets rid of the field our opponent has built up. So yeah, great card, definite 3 off. Next up is 3 copies of Unexpected Die. Well, of course, we only run one Soul Tiger, and this is our way to special summon him out straight from our deck. So we have him on the field and can run into our Kaijus, plain and simple. The next card we run is also very important for the deck, and it's 3 copies of Soul Absorption. Now this card is really nuts, and it helps you survive long enough to get off your combo, because if a card or cards are banished, you gain 500 life points for each. And if you control multiple copies of Soul Absorption, you gain 1000 or 1500 per card. If you think about cards like Tempest right here, it's just nuts how many life points you'll gain, and it will help you stay alive long enough to pull off your combo. Great card and definite 3-off. Of course, we also run some pots in this deck, and the first one is 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Amazing card in this deck. Just banish 10 cards from the top of your deck and then draw 2 cards. Really amazing. This card alone will push our Gren Maju to 4000. It will give us 5000 life points if Soul Absorption is on the field. Really amazing, definite 3-off. As you already probably guessed, we also run, of course, 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance for the same reason. We banish, we draw, and we don't really need our extra deck. So easy 3-off right here. And then, of course, we also run 3 copies of Dimensional Fissure. All monsters sent to the graveyard are banished instead. This also interrupts our opponent pretty good, powers up our Gren Maju and our other tactics we run in the deck. Great card, definite 3-off. And guys, that's it for the spells. Next up, let's talk about the traps, and the first one we talk about is 3 copies of Trap Trick. This card is amazing because it does not only banish 1 normal trap from our deck, except itself, and it can set 1 card with the same name from our deck, and it can be activated this turn. The card we want to banish is, of course, our copy of DD Dynamite. Amazing card, and also one of our winning conditions, because if DD Dynamite is activated, our opponent takes 300 points of damage for each of their cards which is banished, which is amazing. Under Tempest, this will be a huge amount of life points they lose. One of our winning strategies, and definite 3-off and searchable with Trap Trick. A similar card is also Grave Robber's Retribution, which we also run 3 copies of. It's kind of like a weaker version of our DD Dynamite, because during each of your standby phases you inflict 100 points of damage to your opponent's life points for each of your opponent's monsters that have been removed from play. So can just slowly kill our opponent in the grind game. Also not bad and definitely needed. Also helped me win some duels with this deck actually. And finally, we also run 3 copies of Macrocosm. Of course we do. We don't care about the special summon. We just want every card that is sent to the graveyard be banished instead, to interrupt our opponent and also to power up our own monsters, of course. Guys, that's it for the main deck. Let's talk about the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we start things off with 3 copies of Submersible Carrier Aerial Shark. Of course, we want to run 3 copies of each card in our extra deck, as well as we want to run 3 copies of each card in our main deck because of the pots we run, so we're still able to get to them. But the extra deck actually doesn't really matter for this deck. I just searched some monster that kind of add to the strategy, and this monster we can make with 2 Gren Majus, for example, and once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card and inflict 100 damage to your opponent for each of your banished monsters, so just another way to deal some burn damage. The next card is Tri-Edge Lebia. We can also make it with 2 Gren Majus. First of all, we banish all monsters destroyed by battle with this card, and once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach 1 material from this card and target 1 face-up monster on the field. It loses 800 ATK and also its effects are negated. And this changes last until the end of this turn, so banishes all monsters, we can negate some effects, pretty decent. And our last rank 3 monster are 3 copies of Leviair, the Sea Dragon. This card has also a pretty simple effect. We can once per turn detach a material from this card and target 1 banished level 4 or lower monster and special summon that target to your field. If your Gren Maju, for example, or the 3rd Gren Maju got banished, this could be kind of useful, but as I already said, we don't use the extra deck that much actually. And the last Xyz monster is a rank 8, which is Aegeon the Sea Castrum. We can make this with our Gizmek, for example, and it has the effect that during either player's turn we can banish one random face-down monster from our opponent's extra deck face up, and if we do, this card's attack becomes equal to the banished monster. So first of all, we banish, which is always great in this deck. And then, during either player's turn, we can detach a material of this card and target one of your opponent's banished Fusion, Synchro or Xyz monsters, return it to the extra deck, and if we do, we destroy one monster your opponent controls with the same monster card type, so Fusion, Synchro or Xyz. Pretty decent card, we banish, we destroy, it's alright. And then finally, we also want to run 3 copies of SP Little Knight. What can I say? This card also banishes one of the best extra deck monsters. It's a very pricey card still, so don't get it for this deck. You won't use it probably. Yeah, I just wanted to fill up the extra deck spots with something useful, and SP is always useful. It also banishes, so adds to the strategy some way. So yeah, and guys, that's it for the extra deck. Before we end this video, I just want to quickly summon the strategies of this deck. I'm not going to make a combo video. It's not only a going second deck, but it's not really a real combo. You have different lines you want to go down, and let me just explain them real quick. Well, first of all, we want to get our Tempest off. So the strategy for this one is, of course, giving a Kaiju to our opponent and run into it with Soul Tiger. You won't always actually need the Kaiju line because your opponent might already have a monster on the field with 3000 or more attack points, and you can just run into it with Soul Tiger on your own. This is very important because this banishes a tremendous amount of cards and will power up our Gren Maju and our Dynamite and our Grave Robber right here, so we can do our burn damage and have our big monsters on the field. So this is very important. Of course, Macrocosm and Dimensional Fissure do an equal job, but very, very slowly. So that's the reason we have to go into the grind game, and that's why cards like Soul Absorption are so important. And the second half of this deck is, of course, burning your opponent with Dynamite and with the Grave Robber card, so you don't have to deal damage by attacking. Of course you can, because your Gren Maju will be very powerful by this point and is able to OTK if Tempest got off and maybe you already used a Pot of Desires or something like that. All in all, guys, don't take it too seriously. It's a fun rogue deck, definitely fun to play. Of course, the ratios to get everything together so you can pull off those combos is not that great, but it happens. I tried it out a lot the last few weeks, and you'd be surprised how often it actually works pretty well. Just a fun deck, and definitely let me know in the comments what you think about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This would really help us a lot. And yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one.